I'll never forget the night I saw the photo. My own son, smiling wide at a dinner table I once called my own. My daughter-in-law beside him, raising a glass of wine. And the caption? Finally, peace in this house without her around. At that moment, something inside me shattered. Not because of the betrayal, though that burned deep, but because I realized I had become invisible. A ghost in the very home I built, the very family I raised. But ghosts don't stay quiet forever. If my son and his wife wanted me erased, they were about to learn the hardest lesson of all. The woman they cast aside still knew how to fight. And I would make them regret. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 67 years old, a retired schoolteacher from Seattle. And if there's one thing my career taught me, it's patience. Patience with noisy classrooms, patience with life's curveballs, patience even when your own heart is breaking. For most of my life, I believed family meant sacrifice. When my husband passed away, I thought my world had ended. But then I looked at my son, Ryan, my only child, and told myself that if I could give him stability, then maybe my life still had purpose. So when Ryan and his wife, Vanessa, fell on hard times, I didn't hesitate. Ryan had just lost his job. Vanessa complained endlessly about bills piling up. They looked defeated, and as a mother, how could I stand by and watch them crumble? I offered them what little security I had left. Stay in the house, I told them. Just until you're back on your feet. It sounded temporary. A few months, maybe a year at most. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment not far away. I told myself it was only fair. They were young, starting fresh, and needed space. I was older, quieter, I could make do with less. But weeks turned into months. Months into years. And that temporary sacrifice somehow became permanent. Ryan and Vanessa transformed my home, the house my husband and I had spent decades paying off, into their palace. They redecorated with expensive furniture. Vanessa filled the kitchen with designer appliances, and parties became a regular thing. Laughter, music, and lights spilled out of the windows late into the night. Neighbors whispered about their sudden good fortune, about how Ryan must have landed a new job that paid handsomely. And where was I? In a cramped apartment that smelled faintly of mildew, clipping coupons just to keep the lights on. I went from owning a beautiful family home to living like a tenant in my own life. But I kept quiet, because they were my family. And isn't that what love means? To give without expecting anything in return? I repeated that to myself like a prayer, convincing myself that my sacrifice was noble. Vanessa, though. Vanessa never thanked me. Not once. Instead, she treated me like a relic. When I stopped by unannounced, her smile tightened, her voice sharp. "Oh, Margaret, you should have called first." If I stayed too long, she'd glance at her watch, as though waiting for me to leave. Ryan said little. He avoided confrontation, always brushing my concerns aside with, "Don't worry, Mom. We'll figure things out soon." But soon never came. The truth settled heavy in my chest. I had been erased. My role as mother, provider, even as a human being with needs of her own, it had all been replaced by one thing: utility. They didn't see me as Margaret anymore. I was simply the woman who had given up her home, her comfort, her dignity, so that they could live better. And for the longest time, I swallowed that truth. Until the night came when I could no longer ignore it. Last winter was the first time my body reminded me I wasn't invincible. One moment I was stirring soup, the next my knees buckled. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, clutching my chest. A minor heart scare, the doctors later called it. But at that moment, lying alone on cold tile, I thought, this is it. This is how I go. I spent 3 nights in the hospital. 3 nights of waiting. For Ryan. For Vanessa. For my granddaughter Emma. For anyone. The phone never rang. The door never opened. On the 3rd night, unable to sleep, I pulled out my phone. A simple scroll through Facebook shattered me. There it was, Vanessa, in my dining room, the one I had spent decades polishing with my own hands. My china set glimmering under the chandelier. Ryan sat beside her, glass raised, smiling wide. And little Emma in the corner, looking uncomfortable but too polite to protest. The caption, "Finally enjoying this home the way it was meant to be enjoyed." I felt the heart monitor spike as my blood boiled. Meant to be enjoyed? It was my house. My home. Every brick, every photograph, every piece of furniture bore my fingerprints. And yet, they had scrubbed me out of it like I never existed. When I was discharged, I walked back to my apartment, weak but determined to face them. Instead, I found something far worse. A mountain of unopened letters piled on my table, bills, bank notices, credit card statements in my name, accounts I never opened, loans I never signed for, $120,000 in debt, tied to vacations, designer handbags, even a brand new car. My signature, copied again and again. They hadn't just stolen my home. They had stolen my identity. But the final wound came when I dug through a desk drawer Vanessa had carelessly left unlocked one afternoon. Legal documents. Thick. Official. Stamped. A petition to have me declared mentally unfit. To grant Ryan guardianship over me. I remember gripping the paper so tightly it crumpled in my hands. My own son, the boy I had rocked to sleep, who I once defended against bullies, who I gave my everything to, was preparing to strip me of the last thing I had, control over my own life. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the peeling wallpaper, sobbing until my throat ached. I felt small, abandoned, forgotten. But then, something inside me shifted. The tears dried. My hands steadied. My voice, weak for so long, whispered words I hadn't dared to say in years. Enough. They thought I was frail. They thought I would roll over and let them devour me. But they had forgotten one thing. A woman who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind of enemy. And I was ready to show them exactly what that meant. Step 1 was simple. Collect proof. I began small. I ordered copies of my credit reports and bank statements, keeping them in a plain brown folder hidden beneath my mattress. I requested old medical bills that showed my real condition and the fact that I was perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. I even printed Vanessa's careless Facebook posts, each caption dripping with arrogance, "Finally living like we deserve." Every screenshot became another nail in their coffin. Step 2. I called an old friend, Janet, once a sharp, fearless attorney, now retired but still carrying the fire in her eyes. I invited her for coffee, placed the folder on the table, and slid it across. She flipped through page after page, her expression darkening. Then she looked up and said, firmly, "Margaret, this isn't just betrayal. This is elder abuse. It's fraud. And if we handle this right, they won't just lose everything they stole, they'll be exposed." Her words lit something inside me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. Step 3. Play along. I knew Ryan and Vanessa thought I was weak, so I gave them the performance of a lifetime. Whenever Ryan called, I acted distracted. "Oh, I don't remember. Maybe I already paid that bill." I let Vanessa correct me, feed me lines, tighten her grip. Every "yes, dear" was a carefully chosen act. I allowed them to believe I was spiraling into dementia. In truth, I was sharpening every memory, every detail, waiting for the right moment to strike. But gathering evidence and playing the fool wasn't enough. I needed a stage, an audience, a moment they couldn't wiggle out of with lies. And that's where step 4 came in, Christmas dinner. Every year, Ryan and Vanessa hosted a lavish holiday feast in my house, showing off the mansion as though they'd earned it. They always invited me, not out of kindness, but because parading me around made them look generous. the struggling old woman they were taking care of. That year, I accepted the invitation with a polite smile. Of course, dear. I wouldn't miss it. They didn't notice the steel behind my voice. In the weeks leading up, I worked quietly with Janet. She coached me on the timing, the legal terms, the documentation. Together, we rehearsed every step. What papers to reveal first, what questions to ask, what silence to hold until the room itself felt heavy with truth. Christmas wasn't going to be a dinner. It was going to be a trial. And when the lights of that sparkling tree illuminated their smug faces, they wouldn't see it coming. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading the holiday. I was counting down to it. Because on that night, in the very home they stole, Ryan and Vanessa were going to choke on their own lies. And I was going to make sure of it. Christmas Eve had always been my favorite holiday. Not for the gifts or the feasts, but for the memories of warmth, of my late husband carving the roast, of Ryan as a boy shaking his presents before dawn, of family laughter echoing through these very walls. But that night, as I stepped into the house that once held those memories, I realized the warmth had been stripped away and replaced by something cold, artificial, and cruel. The house glittered with new chandeliers and gold-trimmed furniture. Vanessa had spared no expense, using money that wasn't hers to parade a life she hadn't earned. I walked slowly into the dining room, the familiar place now unrecognizable. "Mom," Ryan greeted me, his tone dripping with rehearsed affection. His arm brushed mine stiffly, as though the gesture was a burden. "So glad you could make it tonight." Vanessa leaned in, pressing her perfume-soaked cheek against mine. Her smile was razor-sharp. "It's about family tonight," she said sweetly. But her eyes betrayed her, calculating, smug, certain that I was already beaten. I smiled back. "Of course, dear." Dinner began. Platters of food glistened beneath the golden lights. They raised their glasses, making toasts that sounded like mockery in my ears. "To loyalty," Ryan declared. "To sacrifice," Vanessa added with a smirk, her eyes flicking toward me as if I didn't understand the cruel irony. I played my part. I lifted my glass, though I didn't drink. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what was to come. Every second that passed tightened the noose I'd prepared for them. Halfway through the meal, when the laughter was loudest, I gently placed my fork down on the china plate that once belonged to me. The sound echoed. The room quieted. My voice, steady but laced with steel, cut through the silence. "You know," I began, "loyalty is a funny word, because when I look around this table, all I see is betrayal." The room froze. Forks hovered in the air. Vanessa's painted smile faltered. Ryan furrowed his brow, feigning confusion. "Mom, what are you talking about?" That was my cue. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick folder. With deliberate calm, I opened it and slid the contents across the table. Bank statements, forged signatures, letters from creditors. Every sin, every theft, every betrayal, laid bare under the soft glow of the chandelier. Vanessa's face went pale. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ryan snatched the papers, his face flushing crimson. This is nonsense. You don't understand. You're confused." "Confused." My voice sharpened, rising above his. "No, Ryan. For the past 6 months, I let you believe I was slipping. I let Vanessa think I couldn't keep track of my own name. But while you were laughing behind my back, I was documenting every single crime." And then the doorbell rang. Ryan stood, startled. Vanessa's eyes darted nervously, but I already knew who it was. The front door opened, and in walked Janet, my old friend and retired lawyer, her presence commanding the room. Behind her, a local journalist carried a camera already recording. 2 of the neighbors followed, their phones out, capturing everything. And last came Emma, my granddaughter, her eyes wide and filled with confusion and fear. Janet's voice rang out like a gavel. "Ryan Collins and Vanessa Collins, you are under investigation for fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. Court documents have already been filed. And tonight, the truth will be public." The journalist raised the camera. "We're live," he said flatly. The room erupted. Vanessa lunged at me, shrieking, "You can't do this!" Ryan cursed, slamming his fist on the table. But the cameras didn't miss a thing. Their golden facade was crumbling in real time, exposed for the world to see. And then, the twist I hadn't expected. Emma, my sweet Emma, rose from her chair. Her small hands trembled, her eyes brimming with tears. She looked from her parents to me, her voice breaking. "Grandma, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to live with you." The words silenced the chaos. Ryan froze. Vanessa's face contorted with fury. But for me, it was as if the universe itself had delivered justice. That night, in the very house they stole from me, I took everything back. Not just my dignity, not just my name, but my family, my truth, and my power. For the first time in years, I wasn't the broken woman they pitied. I was the storm they never saw coming. By New Year's, the ripple effects of Christmas Eve had spread far beyond that dining room. Ryan was no longer the polished family man he pretended to be. The court found him guilty of fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. 2 years in prison. No fancy suits. No staged photos of perfect family dinners. Just cold bars and silence. Vanessa, stripped of her smug confidence, faced her own reckoning. Community service. Fines. Forced restitution for every stolen dollar. She went from flaunting designer handbags to scrubbing floors at the local community center. The irony was delicious. Her hands, once so eager to grab what was mine, were now forced into real work. Their so-called friends, the neighbors, the colleagues, the social butterflies who once clung to their wealth, vanished overnight. The same people who used to line up for their parties refused to even say their names. Their reputation, once polished like glass, had shattered into dust. And Emma. Sweet, quiet Emma. The court granted me temporary guardianship while her parents faced their punishments. For the first time in years, her laughter filled my days. We left behind the poisoned walls of that mansion and moved into a small coastal cottage. The air smelled of salt and pine, and the waves outside reminded us that even storms pass, leaving behind calmer seas. In that cottage, Emma and I built something real. We baked cookies that didn't taste of bitterness. We decorated with seashells instead of gold. We spoke freely, without fear of judgment or manipulation. Every morning, when Emma smiled at me over breakfast, I realized that vengeance hadn't just punished my son and his wife, it had given me back my family, the part that mattered. As for me, I felt lighter than I had in decades. Not because of revenge alone, but because I had finally reclaimed my voice. For too long, I believed that being a mother meant forgiving, tolerating, enduring. But love without respect isn't love, it's a cage. They tried to erase me, to reduce me to a weak, disposable old woman. Instead, I erased their illusion and forced the world to see the truth. When the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, fireworks burst across the sky. Emma and I stood on the porch of our little cottage, watching colors bloom over the ocean. She held my hand and whispered, "Grandma, we're free now." And she was right. Because justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't just punish the guilty. It restores the broken. It reminds us that no matter how deep the betrayal, strength can be rebuilt, dignity reclaimed, and hope reborn. That night, I made myself a promise. I would never again shrink to make others comfortable. I would never again let silence protect cruelty. My story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. And this time, I was the author. 6 months later, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Emma and I had settled into our cottage by the sea, and every sunrise felt like a new beginning. Together, we started therapy, healing wounds we both carried in silence for far too long. I found purpose again, volunteering at the Elder Justice Center, teaching others how to recognize betrayal before it destroys them. And here's the truth I carry with me now. Revenge doesn't always grow from hatred. Sometimes it grows from love, from the refusal to let cruelty win. It's about reclaiming dignity when someone tries to strip it away. I also learned that family is not defined by shared blood, but by shared loyalty. Emma stood by me, not because she had to, but because she chose to. That choice means more than any title of mother or son. So I ask you this, what is justice without consequence? If the guilty walk away untouched, if betrayal goes unanswered, then justice isn't justice at all. It's surrender. I didn't surrender. I fought back. And in doing so, I proved to myself and to Emma that strength doesn't fade with age, and silence doesn't protect the innocent. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Would you have fought for the truth, even if it meant breaking apart the family you once built? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like mine resonate with you, about betrayal, justice, and the power of standing tall, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't just survival. It's living free.